Hey, what is going on, Grid? It is Project Fat, and we are back once again with the next episode of the Lockdown Podcast. I'm with my co-host, Star, here today. How are you doing, sir?
I'm good, brother. Glad to be back. How you doing, man?
Doing well, doing well. Yes, very excited to be back. Took a little bit longer to get back to this show as we anticipated early on, but we are back, and we're going to go ahead and start off with a Super Bowl review. We're going to go back and talk a little bit about that game, just how it transpired, and big time win for the Buffalo Bills. I think a lot of people felt like they were going to be the champion all along. They had a great year defensively, especially. So we're going to talk about that game a little bit, and I'm going to go ahead and start off. So the Bills, obviously, like I said, they came out victorious in the Super Bowl, but they had a pretty decent road there as well. They started off with a victory over the Houston Texans. It wasn't anything too difficult for them. It was a 24-14 victory over those Texans. But their next game against the Indianapolis Colts was one that I was a little surprised about. That game was a much closer than I thought it was going to be. I thought it was going to be a little bit more, like that Texans game, a little bit more in hand. But the Colts definitely gave them a run for their money. It was a 17-14 game, so very, very close there. And then obviously the Super Bowl matchup, the Rams made it back as I had thought that they would. Made it back to defend their title, but they were unable to do so. The final score was the Bills 27 over the Rams, who were able to score 16 points. And the Bills, the story of the game was Darryl Blair, hands down. The guy won the Offensive Rookie of the Year, your best running back in the AFC, hands down, if not the entire league. And he was definitely the difference maker. Tolliver had a decent game, 9 for 13, threw for just under 200 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. But Darryl Blair, 18 carries, 164 yards, 2 touchdowns, as well as he had caught a passing touchdown in the game as well. So 3 total touchdowns for him, well over 200 yards of total offense. And then the defense did what they've done all year as well, and they've created turnovers. They had 3 interceptions on the day as Jared Goff struggled. He was only 15 for 28, just barely above 50% passing. Todd Gurley only had 9 yards on 9 carries. So that defense, as everyone talked about all year long with the Buffalo Bills, was stifling. And then the only positive note for the Rams in this game was Cedric Broughton, who had 4 catches for 115 yards and a touchdown as well in that game. But the Bills, I think everyone expected them to win that game, which they did. They did it pretty handily, in my opinion, and they were able to lean on Darryl Blair early and often, as well as down the stretch, to solidify their victory in this game. And so, with that being said, we were able to get in touch with the Rams owner, Timbo, to kind of talk about that game a little bit, see how he felt, what he thought why the outcome was what it was in that game. So we're going to go ahead and listen to what he had to say about the defeat in the Super Bowl.
Timbo here, owner of the LA Rams. Last season was was up and down. We went through a lot of adversity last season. And for us to even be back in the Super Bowl for the 3rd consecutive year was was a challenge in itself. We lost our starter, our one of our very key pieces of the team, Jared Goff, the quarterback. We lost him for over half the year, and we had backups last year. We had a couple backup quarterbacks that stepped in at different points throughout the last 8 weeks, and we were able to, just sneak into the playoffs, and we ran, from the 6th seed, we made it all the way back to the Super Bowl. But I think we overachieved last year. Last season, I don't feel that team was equipped to make it to the Super Bowl. We had some things, break away for us, and we ended up being in that spot. But definitely want to congratulate again Terrio and the Buffalo Bills. I had the pleasure of playing him in the Super Bowl the previous season, and he got his revenge this year. So it was just a great game. I mean, we just couldn't. They had 3 big plays, and it literally, at different points of the game, snatched the momentum or created, all the momentum for them. And we just couldn't never get on a consistent attack, especially offensively. Our offense kind of gets us going, and the defense cleans up all our dirty work. But we lost Gurley. Also, he got hurt towards the end of the 3rd quarter, and then the 4th quarter we were kind of like just trying to hopefully get a play here and there, and it was just too little, too late. So we're looking to improve, and My guys fought hard last year, and again, like I said, we shouldn't have been where we were, but we showed guts in key situations, and we were able to keep clawing and just keep surviving. And that's what we did, and it just wasn't our time. It wasn't our time last year, and Buffalo definitely took advantage of that. And just looking forward to bigger and better things this year. Hopefully looking to get one more title back to LA, and just try to keep growing, try to get better every day.
Yeah, and like you said, everybody really expected the Bills to win, but I really wanted to give a shout out to Timbo. I mean, what a season. I mean, third time in a row back in the Super Bowl. That in its own is an exceptional accomplishment. And this season in particular, man, I mean, the quarterback position, it was somewhat of a carousel. I mean, you had Goff, who got hurt. Then you had the backup who came in, struggled. Put in the third string guy, who played great for a couple of weeks. And then next thing you know, they're in the playoffs and they have to insert Goff again. So I wonder, did they put him in a little too early? Maybe he wasn't ready. Should they have rolled the hot hand? Because, as you alluded to earlier, he did not play very well in the Super Bowl. But regardless, shout out to Timbo and his Rams. Great team. They're always competitive in the NFC. A tough NFC, especially compared to the AFC. In my opinion, the NFC is a much stronger conference. So what he's able to do is very impressive. But still can't take away from what Terrio did with his Bills. I mean, talk about a special season. I think they only had one loss. Correct me if I'm wrong, Fat. One loss on the season?
Yeah, that's correct. There's only one loss on the year.
Yeah, and I mean, we were even talking on our last episode, it may be the best defense of all time in the history of the grid. So, nothing to take away from him. Excellent season. But I got to ask you, Fat, you think the Bills repeat?
I think that's a fair question. Obviously, I don't think they're going to be able to replicate the defense that they had this year. I think that's really going to be the big thing for them, is they're going to have to find a little bit different way to win. But if they can continue to hand the ball to Blair and have the performance out of him that they did last year, I don't think that defensive performance is going to need to be what it was. Games for them were lopsided all year long because they had the ability to run the ball as well as play very, very good defense. So I definitely think that they can. I still think that they're the best team in the AFC. I think coming into the season, even after the offseason, which we're going to touch on here in just a moment, even after the offseason and all the additions that other teams have made, I don't know if there's a clear-cut team that has taken over as far as the favorite coming into the season. So I think right now that they most definitely, and they've already gone off to a quick start as well, to really start off their back-to-back championship run here in really good fashion. So as of right now, I'd have to say yes. I think that they're definitely very, very favorited to repeat, and I just don't know who's going to be able to beat them. In the regular season, that's fine. They lost once last year, but that was the only time they lost. Every team has an off day. It's not easy to go undefeated. But
my Saints, baby.
Yeah, exactly. So it's going to be difficult, man. I just don't see it happening right now. Maybe we are still early in the season, so maybe we'll have a team that kind of comes out of nowhere that can potentially take them down. I don't know if there's a team in the AFC at all that's going to be able to compete with them, especially on both sides of the football with the running game as well as that defense. So it's going to need to be somebody in the NFC, and I don't know anyone that's going to be better than those Rams once again in the NFC either. So, we're going to have to wait and see. It's going to be interesting. It's still early on in the season, but right now I think the Bills are definitely the clear-cut favorite.
I'm going to agree with you for sure, especially in the AFC, and perfect segue into our next topic regarding free agency. There were a lot of teams that went out and spent a ton of money, and a lot of teams that seemed to be a little bit conservative with their money. One team that I consider one of the losers in free agency was the Indianapolis Colts. And as we know, they seem to be the only team in the AFC playoffs that could really hang with the Buffalo Bills. These guys really didn't do much. Their main signing was an outside linebacker named Rashad McAllister, who is currently not even starting. And they signed a kicker. So that's a little bit of a concern to me, especially in that division, because although the conference as a whole may be a little bit weaker, I think that is the powerhouse division in that conference. I mean, we had the Houston Texans make the playoffs at 9-7, and we had the Tennessee Titans make the playoffs, I believe, at 11-5. So you had 3 teams from that division make the playoffs, and it doesn't seem that the Indianapolis Colts got any better. So it'll be interesting to see how it unfolds down the stretch in the AFC, because the Colts just lost to the Kansas City Chiefs, who were the worst team last year in the grid. They had the number 1 overall pick. So it just goes to show you that the AFC is very, very competitive, but the worst team can go and beat a playoff team. It seems the competitive gap there's not really much of a gap there. So we'll see what happens, but to continue on with the losers of the free agency, I want to touch on another team in the NFC. This one really surprised me as well. The Philadelphia Eagles. I mean, they were the number 1 seed in the NFC. They finished 13-3. High expectations coming into this season. You would think that team would compete to maybe make the Super Bowl this time instead of the LA Rams in the NFC, but their main signing was a running back named DJ Whitley. This guy is averaging 2.8 yards per carry, and the Philadelphia Eagles are 0-3. They already have the same amount of losses as they did last year, so it's another team that I'm a little bit concerned about. But that winning pedigree, Hound is a great owner. Can't really count him out, but I'm going to go ahead and say I think they missed the playoffs. I'm going to go ahead and throw out a bold statement right off the bat. What do you think, Fat?
Well, and I'm going to talk about, in the next segment after we finish this part up, I'm going to actually talk about my predictions. And once again, I'm going to have to disagree with you on that one. But I think you bring up valid points about both of those teams. It's just one of those things when, yes, they both had good seasons. They both made the playoffs last year. But when you come up short like that, I feel like you have to do something to really take the next step to be able to beat these teams, because the Buffalo Bills didn't really lose much. They were able to keep pretty much everybody on that team, especially the starters, which is going to be difficult. If you don't do something to keep pace with those guys, how do you expect to beat them? And you talked about in the AFC for the Colts, you talked about the Texans made the playoffs as well as the Colts, and who was that third team? And then the Titans as well. But another team, again in that same division, the Jacksonville Jaguars are looking great so far as well. So they had a good Week 1 matchup. So you can't count the Jacksonville Jaguars either. So that's a really tough division, like you said. You can't go into the offseason, fall short in the playoffs in the year before, nearly beating the Super Bowl champions, and then do absolutely nothing to improve your team. So I have to agree with that. And then same thing in the NFC with those Eagles. Same thing. They had potential, to make it into the Super Bowl themselves, but once again fell short, just like the Colts did, and then didn't do anything either to help improve that team. So it's really difficult to see. I still think personally that the Eagles are going to rebound. And once again, I'll talk about that a little bit more in the next segment. But I have to agree with you on both of those teams. Very, very disappointing to see them with the lack of, drive to improve their teams. But we'll still have to see what they can do. They still have good teams in my opinion. But once again, I just don't think they did what they needed to do to take that next step.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a clear cut. I don't think there's any argument. The AFC South has to be the toughest division in the entire league. Really, even on the NFC side, you can really make a case for all 4 teams to win the division. And I really don't think you can do that with any other division in the grid. So, as you said, it'll be interesting to see how it unfolds. But to jump to another team in the AFC that I thought this was very interesting, the Miami Dolphins. They were my clear-cut winner in the AFC during the offseason. I mean, these guys had money to spend, and they threw it out there like crazy. I mean, they signed Terron Armstead, who was a member of my New Orleans Saints. Unfortunately, we didn't have the money to re-sign him, but he had a phenomenal season. He didn't give up 1 sack on the year. He was the runner-up in offensive lineman of the NFC. He lost that award to Tyron Smith of the Dallas Cowboys, who I think we can all agree is the best offensive lineman in football. Even in real-life football, I mean, he has to be the best lineman. On top of that, they signed Alan Krachin, the tight end from Seattle, which was very interesting to me. I'm not sure exactly why he was even available. He was by far their best, receiving option. He led the league in touchdowns, led the league in catches, was second in yards. He was really the main target there, so that was interesting to me. And obviously a guy like that, when you sign him, it's going to be an immediate impact. And then you look at the secondary, which was the Achilles heel of the Miami Dolphins and ultimately their downfall as to why they had such a bad season. They ranked 30th in pass defense last year. They signed Patrick Peterson, Tyrann Mathieu, and Roman Gardner. I mean, that's three guys that are going to come into your program and immediately start day one, plug-and-play starters, and they're going to play at a high level. Patrick Peterson, 2 games into the season, 2 interceptions. Tyrann Mathieu, he's always around the ball. He's going to force his fumbles. He's going to get his interceptions, make his tackles. He's going to be near the top of the league in a lot of categories. And then they signed a cornerback. He's a 3-year player by the name of Roman Gardner. And this kid is unreal. I mean, he's 6'3", long frame. You love that in a corner. Cornerbacks are usually a little bit shorter of a position. 5'10" is probably the norm, I'd say. So 6'3", you gotta love that. He's physical, he's long, he presses, and he runs a 4.3 40. So, I mean, the guy is a freakish athlete, and he's playing on the opposite side of Patrick Peterson. So, right there with those signings, I think Miami, I don't think they're going to challenge the Bills for the division, but I think with those signings, they become relevant in the wild card picture. Like I said, they had the money, and they went out and spent it. So, it'll be interesting to see. I wouldn't be surprised if we see this team in and around the wild card picture as the season progresses.
Right, and like you said, the thing that interests me the most about that is I feel like there was something going on within that ownership group in the front office, because the Dolphins in the last couple of weeks have actually undergone new ownership. So I just feel like there was something going on, that this was kind of something that was planned, and the new ownership coming in said, you know what, we want to win, and we want to win now. So they really, it seems like, whatever was talked about or agreed upon, that this was part of it, is, hey, we're going to work on this, taking this team over, but we need to make sure that we have the players to win with. So, it was definitely interesting. They went out and spent a ton of money. Those guys, yes, they're getting up there as far as age and things like that go, but they can still play ridiculously good football. And like you said, Tyrann Mathieu is still all over the field around the football, which is what you want from a guy that's playing center field like that. So, and he can cover tight ends and run with them and be big and physical with them as well, which is something else you also look for from a safety. So great job by those Dolphins, and it's going to be interesting to see. They might be the team that can knock the Bills off, but who knows? We'll just have to wait and see as we progress into the season.
Absolutely. Then if we go to the flip side, to the NFC, a team that I would love to talk about. I mean, high praise to these guys. Props, man. The Arizona Cardinals. These guys, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe they had the 3rd, maybe 4th pick in the draft this season. I'm not sure. Do you remember, Fat, exactly what pick they had?
I know they were in the top 5 for sure. Definitely, had a down season last year. But they definitely did what they needed to do, and we're really looking to come back with vengeance this year.
Right. So with that being said, we know guaranteed they were at 5th pick. So they had a horrible season last year, to say the least. But they really went out and tried to address a lot of holes that they had this offseason, and they did it in free agency. A lot of teams like to fill their bench with free agent guys, free agent pickups, and try and go for those starters or guys that have the potential to grow into superstars in the draft. But the Arizona Cardinals was another team like the Miami Dolphins. They had the money, and they went out and spent it. And they spent it smart. They did it the right way. As we alluded to earlier, Miami picked up Pat P and Tyrann Mathieu. they were Arizona Cardinals. So what did the Cardinals do? They turned around and they signed Richard Sherman and Earl Thomas. Yeah, they're getting up there in age, but these are two guys that are still able to play at a high level. These are two guys that have a ton of experience. These are two guys that can come into the locker room and make an immediate impact and really get those younger guys to play at the highest level possible. So I like what they did there with those two signings. But on top of that, they signed a veteran, Joe Hayden, who's playing in the slot. And they signed 3 offensive linemen that are starting at the moment. Eric Fisher at left tackle, Marcus Gilbert at right tackle, and Jackson Urlacher at left guard. 3 linemen they picked up in free agency and plugged them in and started them. And, I mean, the results are there. These guys are 2-0. And Le'Veon Bell, their running back, is averaging 4.6 yards per carry, which is a huge, huge improvement from last year. So I commend them on their signings on that end. If you want to be a successful team in the grid, you really need to be able to dominate the trenches. So I think right there, although those may be quote-unquote boring picks, offensive linemen, I think those are my favorite signings that they made. And like I said, Sherman and Earl Thomas, these are guys that come in and make an immediate impact in more ways than one. I mean, Sherman is their number 1 corner. Earl Thomas leads the team 2 games, 2 interceptions. So they're already, I think they won 4 games last year. They're halfway to that point right now at 2-0. But I want to make a quick prediction on these guys because I know that's what we're going to get to next. So I want to get out in front of you here, if you don't mind, Fat. The NFC South. They're 2-0. They look great. They look promising. But I think we're going to see an end to their run soon. These guys have been towards the bottom of the league in the last couple of seasons. As we were talking about earlier, they had a top 5 pick. And their next 3 games, I mean, they have a brutal schedule. Their next 3 games, they go to New Orleans, they play San Francisco, and they play the LA Rams. Right there, you have the 5-time defending NFC South champions in the Saints. You have the defending NFC West champions San Francisco 49ers. And you have the LA Rams, who have been to the Super Bowl the last 3 years. So I think they're going to lose those next 3 games, and I think they're going to lose them big. And I think their season derails from that point on. I don't think they'll be able to recover. I don't know what you're thinking, but I'm going to go out on a limb and say the NFC West, the Rams are going to get that crown back.
Yeah, and we'll go ahead and, go into the next part and kind of talk about the predictions for this season, in my opinion. And the only thing I have to say is I don't disagree. I do think that the Rams are going to get back to the being the division winner this year. As in my opinion, I still think they're the favorite in the NFC as well. But just kind of touch on what you said is, like you said, their next 3 games are absolutely brutal. 2 of the 3 are at home, though, which is good. It's going to be extremely important. The Saints will be in Arizona as well as the 49ers. And the Cardinals already this year, they're 2-0. I know you mentioned that. Both of the games that they have won have been within their division. They beat the Niners on the road in San Francisco week 1, 26-14. And then they went to Seattle and beat the Seahawks 24-17. So, yes, those teams are tough. The Niners are definitely starting out rough themselves at 0-2. But, like you said, these next 3 games are really going to be a test for them. They're off to a great start. They need to continue that. They need to show that the money that they spent was worthwhile. And I think if they can get through these next 3 games with, 2 out of the 3 with a victory, it's really going to be, good for them. It could potentially shake up that NFC. But I just don't know if it's going to happen. I'm not buying into them so soon. I don't think that the Niners are going to allow them to get swept by the Cardinals this year, so that's going to be interesting. And then their first game against the Rams will be in Los Angeles, as the Rams will be at home in that game week 5. So it'll be interesting to see. They, like I said, have gotten off to a great start, but it's going to be tough these next 3 games. And I actually don't even have them making the playoffs, even with this strong start and everything you just talked about as far as them adding all that talent to their team. I just don't see it happening.
They won't win another division game. Mark it. I'm telling you that right now.
And that very
they won't
well
win
could
another
be.
division game.
Yeah, and I mean that very well could be. That division is also another very, very tough division. But like I said, I just don't see the Niners them being 0-2. I don't see that as the norm. It's definitely not a normal thing. The Cardinals are on the opposite end of the spectrum. They're starting off hot. The Niners are starting off slow. It happens, but like you said, I just don't know that I don't buy into them. Although they had that great offseason, I just don't buy it right now. So I actually don't even have them making the playoffs. Right now, the way I have the NFC looking to be is in the East, I have the Eagles still winning that division, even though they are off to the slow start that you just spoke upon. In the North, I have the Chicago Bears winning that division. In the South, you're going to love me for this one. I have the Bucks winning that division.
All right. This partnership is not going to work.
I know, man. I'm sorry.
It's not working out, man.
I just kind of see that's where it's going. It's I find it hard to go against the MVP of the league there at the running back position.
The Bucks are 0-2 though.
Yeah, and once again,
my Saints are 2-0. So
and once again,
I'm off to a hot start, man.
And you never know, the Cardinals, a team that only won 4 games last year, they've already won their first 2 games of the year. So it's really weird. This actually, the start of the season has been very, very surprising for a lot of different teams, but this is just the way that I see it. I see the Bucks making a good run towards the end of the season.
You need glasses.
Maybe I do. We'll have to look into that as well. I just talked about the Rams winning that West. And the 2 wild card teams is I do have your Saints making it into the playoffs still, but in the wild card. That very well could be flipped. Maybe the Saints win that division and the Bucks make it into the wild card. But I do see both of you guys making it into the playoffs either way. And you could potentially also be, a first-round matchup as well. So I don't know. We'll have to see how that one works out. But I do see both of those teams making it. And then the other team in the wild card is the Minnesota Vikings. I think that Tout and his Vikings have been playing really well to start the season as well. You hear him talk about him all the time. Kent Gunn, the guy is, whether I want to admit it or not, the guy is a monster. And Tout is very, very happy about that player and what he's been doing for that team. Hopefully he can stay out of trouble this year and not get caught up in the performance-enhancing drugs conversation again this year. So we'll have to keep an eye on that, but I really, really like that Vikings team. I just don't see them being able to beat the Bears down the stretch. So we'll have to watch that as well. And I actually think, correct me if I'm wrong, I think they already did beat the Bears this season in their first matchup. So, again...
Yeah, they actually whomped the Bears this week, I believe.
And I'm pretty sure that's what it was. So, again, it's just a really weird start to the season. But I see these teams that, have been notoriously known for being good teams that are having these slow starts. I see them rebounding and making it back into the playoffs and most likely winning their division. So jump over to the AFC side of things in the East.
Hold on, before you jump over to the AFC.
Okay.
One thing about the Vikings is Teddy Bridgewater I think he broke his ribs was the injury, but he's out for the next 6 weeks. So I think that's going to be a huge, huge blow to the Minnesota Vikings. But we do agree on the fact that I think the Bears ultimately will win the division, even though they just lost to the Minnesota Vikings. But, I have the Bears winning the NFC North. I agree as well. We have the Rams winning the NFC West. NFC South, I'm obviously going to say my New Orleans Saints, I think, will win.
Biased.
Yeah, I gotta have some self-confidence, though, right?
Yeah, for sure.
If I don't have confidence in my team, we don't have anything. So I think we're going to win the NFC South. NFC East, I think the Giants are going to get it, man. Under new ownership, Hitman, he's coming and he's looked phenomenal. They've been playing really, really great football all around. And as we alluded to earlier, the Eagles are off to a slow start. Although I think they can rebound and contend for the wild card. But I think they fall just short. I'm going to give the wild card spots to the San Francisco 49ers and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And that rounds out my NFC playoff picture. But
yeah, and I don't necessarily see what you just said as being no chance of it happening. It's just one of those things where the way that the playoffs have kind of rounded out so far, or the playoff picture is rounded out early on in the season, it's, like I said, it's a really weird year. A lot of the teams that you don't typically see towards the top of the divisions are starting off the season there really with strong starts. It's just a matter of them being able to be consistent, and are they going to be able to hold on to that down the stretch halfway through the season and beyond that is really going to be the question that it comes down to. So we're going to have to wait and see as far as that goes. But the AFC, I think, is going to be a little bit easier to predict, simply starting with the AFC East and the defending Super Bowl champions. Hands down, Buffalo Bills are going to win that division once again.
Yeah, that division is a cakewalk. The Bills will definitely get that division. And
you talked about the Dolphins and their great season, but a lot of just different things, a lot of question marks for me still with all those teams aside from the Bills. Like I said, they didn't really lose anything on that defensive side of the ball or on the offensive side of the ball, which I think is a big difference for them. So hands down, I think that they're going to win the AFC East. Going on to the AFC West, I have, even once again with a slow start to the season, the Oakland Raiders winning the division this year. They have a ton of talent. They were able to make it into the playoffs last year, but I think they're going to do it again this year, even though they are currently, with the way that it works out, sitting at the bottom of the AFC West in the 4 spot there, but I think that they'll rebound. They're only a game behind the Chargers. Then onto the AFC South, I kind of touched on them a little bit earlier. You talked about the Colts and their poor offseason as far as signing free agents goes, but the Jacksonville Jaguars, I think, are my clear-cut favorite and actually might be the team that can hang with the Buffalo Bills and possibly give them that loss and not allow them to repeat in the Super Bowl. And again, just kind of what I've seen from them and the way that they've been able to win and been able to dominate most of the teams that they've played so far, the 3 teams they've played so far, has been very, very impressive to me. So I really
So what exactly about that Jags team do you think can translate into a win versus the Bills, potentially? What do you think they do so well that they can hang with the Buffalo Bills, who are the reigning champs?
Well, I think they play defense really well also. And the thing that worries me about the Bills is Tolliver, even in that Super Bowl, he is a game manager. Darryl Blair is hands down the reason why this offense clicks in Buffalo. So
right. One-dimensional can be an issue. You're right.
Yeah,
okay.
And I think that is what it can come down to, because honestly, I didn't really see it, and obviously you can tell with a 15-1 record outside of the loss to your New Orleans Saints, the Bills really didn't have anyone that really challenged them until the Colts did in the playoffs. Where they were only able to edge them out by 3 points. But I really think that unless Tolliver can take that next step and be more than just that game manager that I think that he currently is, and Blair obviously had a tremendous season last year and he continues to do so, I really don't see them being able to win unless Tolliver takes that next step. So, and I'm not saying win. They're going to win a lot of games still in the regular season, but when they come up against a team that can play defense just as well as they can, which I think the Jags will be able to do so. I've already seen it so far, with a huge shutout in week 1 and a pretty, decent game in weeks 2 and week 3 as well on the defensive side of the ball. I think that the Jags can be able to match up with them on the defensive side of things, and potentially that could be the difference in them being able to upset those Buffalo Bills.
I agree with you there. I think the Jags have the best chance to knock off the reigning Super Bowl champs. For sure. They've looked great this year, and as you said, week 1, that 33-0 thumping of the Miami Dolphins was super, super impressive.
Right, and kind of looking at them as well on the defensive side of the ball so far through the season, they've only given up 34 yards per game on the ground, and that's what I think is going to be the difference is, can Tolliver, maybe he can. We just haven't really seen it because he hasn't had to do it yet because the defense was creating turnovers for Buffalo, giving the offense the ball so much, and they're just like, here, Blair, take it, carry us home, and that's what he was doing. So, but that's what I think that the Jags are going to be able to do against these guys is their run defense is pretty darn good, and I think they're going to be able to stop them and give them a fight, similar to what the Colts did, but they might be able to do what the Colts couldn't do and come out with that victory. So, who knows? Once again, it's still early. Yeah, I could feel differently about these predictions halfway through, but I honestly feel very, very comfortable with what I've predicted so far. But onto the last division in the AFC is the North. And, I hate to be this guy, but I'm like you.
No, you're winning that division, man. I'm with you.
You got to be.
I have total faith in you that you will take that division.
And I feel as we will as well. We just had a tough loss against the Miami Dolphins, and we lost that game on our own. 2 interceptions in overtime. Winey did go down in that game, and the backup was unable to get us to victory there. But we also, on top of that, we missed a field goal inside 45 yards to end the fourth quarter that would have won the game as well. So we hands down lost that game to ourselves. We should have come out with a victory there on the road. But, things happen. That's why you play the games. You never know what's going to happen. But I do think that my Ravens, are going to be able to win that division as well. We're very, very confident about some of the additions that we've been able to bring in this year to help with that defense, which is what we felt like was struggling for us last year. But then in the wild card, I think my 2 wild card teams right now are going to be the Cleveland Browns and the Indianapolis Colts.
I was actually just going to say I'm very interested to see the matchup between your Ravens and the Browns. I feel like that division is going to be a 2-team race between you guys.
Yeah,
it'll be real interesting to see how that unfolds for sure.
Yeah, and that's what it came down to last year. We were able to separate ourselves, at the end of the season. And clinch that division before, week 17. But I think that, the Browns are a very, very good team. They continue to improve their team every year as well. And I don't think we're going to be able to do what we did last year. We got lucky. We were able to beat them both games. And I don't know if we'll be able to do that again because, Cleveland's not necessarily an easy place to go into and play. So that'll be interesting to see. But, that's the AFC side of things. East is the Bills. North are the Ravens, south are the Jaguars. Raiders win the West, and then the Browns and the Colts are going to make it in the wild card positions. So I don't know if there's anything else that you want to add or maybe some teams that you think could potentially make it in.
Yeah, and to start with your division, I hate to tell you, Fat, I like to see the Browns relevant. So I'm going to have to take another shot at you. Go Browns, baby. I'm rooting for you.
Yeah, you know what, man? We keep doing this every single week to each other, but yeah, I really don't know if this partnership is going to continue to work out. We're going to need to have some therapy or something going on if we're going to keep this thing going.
I may have to record this thing with boxing gloves on, man.
Hey, man, let's do it. That's what you feel like we need.
Yeah, but round out the rest of the AFC, my predictions, I agree with you. As far as the Jaguars go, as I said earlier, I really think they're the only team that can compete with the Bills right now. I think they're the only team that you can confidently say they can compete with the Bills. Other teams may grow into form as the season goes on, so we'll see how that goes. But I like the Colts as well. They will be a wild card team in my opinion. In the AFC North, I do have you winning, even though I'm rooting for the Browns, like I said. But in the AFC West, I disagree with you. I think the Raiders are off to a bad start. I'm not sure if they can recover. That division seems to be much better this season than it was last season. I think, that's a tough division, man. I feel like all 4 teams are so competitive with each other. So it'll be really interesting to see. I think I'm going to keep a closer eye on that division more than most. But I think I'm going to give the Chargers the division title as of now. They've been playing really great football. I actually got a chance to tune in and watch their last game versus the Chiefs. Their defense played phenomenal. And as you know, defense wins championships. That's the trend, especially on the grid. So the AFC East, we both agreed, was the Bills. And I think that last wild card team, I'm going to agree with you. I think the Browns get in as well. They'll be the 5 or the 6 seed. I'm going to say the 6 seed. I'm going to give the Colts the 5 seed.
Yeah,
I think the Colts finish with maybe 10, 11 wins.
Yeah, and that's kind of how I had it worked out as well. As I think the Browns will kind of sneak in maybe in the last couple of weeks for that final playoff spot. But the Chargers, I think, are a good team to look at as well, like you just mentioned. I definitely don't want to count them out, but once again, I haven't seen the consistency enough from them. Yes, they are 2-1. They're heading into a bye next week after losing a tough game 6-3 against the Seattle Seahawks, who obviously have a good defense as well. So they're going into the bye week at 2-1. They come out of the bye. They face the Pittsburgh Steelers, who are a team that have not been able to get a victory just yet this year, but that'll be another home game. So they're starting their season with 4 straight home games. Then they go on the road for, let's see, they've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of their next 8 games are on the road.
Ouch.
Which is going to be tough. And they got to go against teams like those Arizona Cardinals that we talked about. They have a division game against the Broncos. They play the Los Angeles Rams as well on the road, the Tennessee Titans, Texans, which made the playoffs. So it's definitely
the Broncos. That's another team you can't sniff at. They came on at the end of last season. So who's to say? I mean, that division is so competitive. We can see 2 to 3 teams in the playoffs out of that division potentially.
Yeah.
We'll see, man.
For sure. But and that's why I don't believe in the Chargers at this point. Is like I said, yes, they've started off well, but they've played 3 straight games at home, and they have a 4th one coming up at home right after their bye week. And so if they go out of that 7 of 8 games on the road that they're getting ready to run into, and they are still towards the top of that division, maybe I'll buy into them at that point in time. But I just honestly don't realistically see that happening, because then they play the Raiders, who, once again, I talked about winning this division. Their last 4 games of the year, they play the Raiders twice, once at home, once on the road. In Week 17, they'll be in Oakland. And then they also play 2 more teams that we talked about being in the playoffs in the AFC, in the Indianapolis Colts and the Jacksonville Jaguars as well. So they have a really, really tough schedule from this point moving forward. And I just don't see them taking that next step, especially with all these playoff teams from the previous seasons, as well as teams that we talked about making it in this year. I just find it really hard to see them doing. But like I said, they can make me a believer if they can come out of that tough stretch of road games at the top of that division.
Yeah, man. I mean, what a time in the grid, huh? I mean, final season of the cycle. As you can see, there's a ton of possible scenarios as far as playoff pictures. I mean, we have team selection looming. What a time, huh?
Oh, yeah, most definitely, man. It's going to be really, really fun. Team selection, all those things coming up. And as well, we're going to go ahead and end the show here as we finish up our season predictions with something we just like to do just to make sure that, everyone knows that the admins truly appreciate the work that everyone is putting in, from everybody in the grid, and that everything is being kept track of, and the contributions really mean something. So we're going to go ahead and jump into our top 5 shout out with the top 5 as they sit right now. And I'm going to go ahead and let Star, since he is a part of that decision-making process, tell us about who the top 5 is.
Yeah, and we talked about it a little bit on the first episode, and I don't want to sound like a broken record, but really what separates us from the other Madden communities is each owner is expected to contribute in some way other than just playing their games. And I mean, the grid right now, there's so many guys stepping up contribution wise, and it's really awesome to see. So shout out to everybody in the league, really, that's doing their thing. Even if you're not on the top 5 call-up list or as high as you'd like to be, team selection wise, we still have time. Keep doing your thing. You'll get there eventually, man. Consistency is key. But for now, I want to shout out our top 5 call-up list currently, which is led by the number 1 prospect, Jay Gutt, who is the owner of the Jacksonville Jaguars, who we've been raving about on this show quite a bit. Number 2, we have Matty Live, the owner of the Green Bay Packers. We haven't really talked about him much on this episode, but we were graced with his presence on the first episode. He's our draft guru. He came in and gave us a ton of insight leading up to the draft this past year. Number 3, we have Notch. He's the owner of the Washington Redskins. He's another guy who's just super consistent. He releases a post-game report after every single game. If you want to check out any of our content, especially blogs, because blogging is a big thing in the grid, just check out our Daddy Leagues page, daddyleagues.com/thegrid. Then you have Dark Brawler 12, the owner of the Colts. We actually talked about him quite a bit on this show as well. as a very good competitive user in the AFC, and on top of that, he does a lot not on the sticks as well. I mean, he helps out with our Twitter. He's constantly putting out content. And then we have the newest member of the top 5, his first appearance, the Chiefs user, Ray-Ban Abacha. He's really been a great member. He's stepped up big time. He's a member of the stats team. He's doing a lot of things to help out. Always has a very, very positive attitude. He's brought in a couple of guys on referrals. He's also a member that we think very highly of. So you 5 guys, big shout out to you. You guys are really killing it. Would love to see you continue it. I know you guys are going to continue it. I really want to see you guys get called up to the NBL. That's what the grid is all about. And that's ultimately why I'm a part of the admin team. I love seeing these guys grow, man. It's really awesome to see a guy join the grid and how they grow from day one, ultimately up until they get called up into the NBL. So shout out to you top 5 guys and the rest of the league. Shout out to you guys as well, man. Just because you're not on the top 5 call-up list yet doesn't mean you can't get there. So keep grinding, keep working. And yeah, there's really not much else to say.
Yeah, and just to touch on before we get out of here, the one thing that people, I want to touch on what you said is just because you're not on the list doesn't mean that what you're doing is not important. These lists are, being a part of the admin team at one point in time myself here in the grid, it's not easy by any means to, go through and keep track of everybody and what they're doing and be able to make these lists for those people. So just understand that, the top 5 doesn't mean that those are the only 5 people doing anything. A lot of people are contributing to this league. That's what makes it so great, is because we have a ton of owners that are putting out so much stuff for people to read and, visual and, the podcast like we're doing here today, different things like that everyone is putting time and effort into that really makes this league great, like Star alluded to a moment ago. So, everyone continue what you're doing. Really appreciate it, from myself as well as those guys on the admin team. I know they talk about it a lot, and they're constantly looking at, who's best, to be on this list right now. So, again, keep doing what you guys are doing. You guys will all get there. Take it from me. I've been there before as well. It's very, very worth the time and the effort to put in to get into the NBL. So keep doing what you guys are doing. We really, really appreciate you guys tuning in. A little bit longer show today, but it's because it was such a long time since our last one. A lot of content in here. Hope you guys enjoyed it, and we will be back here soon, probably halfway through the season, to touch on that, how the playoff implications look, as well as maybe some things to start talking about team selection and things like that as well. So thank you all for tuning in with us. We really, really appreciate it, and we will be back here with you guys soon. Myself as well as Star, we're going to go ahead and tune out, and we will be back soon.